Happy 82nd birthday. It's
Yay!
hard to believe that you've hit 82. Can you believe it yourself?
Yes.
Well, that's good. I was trying to remember my first memory of my dad, and it was the first memory that I heard about my dad. When my dad, as you all know, was quite the carpenter and quite the fixer-upper. He was a man of many trades and many expertise areas, so people will call him for everything. But my mom tells me the story that when her water broke, my dad was painting a bathroom. And normally most husbands would be nervous as hell and they would drop everything and go. But my dad told my mom, "Shirley, can you please wait till I'm done with the bathroom?" So that is the first memory that I was told about my dad and my coming. And I remember that we lived in a house on Galvin Street in Culver City. We lived around from the Digglesmiths. We had friends that were close by. We hung out with them a lot. And my dad was always working on building something or another. If we needed a tree house or a bicycle put together, my dad was always the go-to guy. And I loved having all of our family over, and we would go to visit the Lapidus kids, and we would go on all these fun summer trips. And my dad built this container that would go on top of a station wagon, and it held everything you would need to have a camp kitchen. And that is what my mom would fill up when we went camping. And I loved going camping in the summers because it would be the Digglesmiths and the Lapidus crew. And Steve Shapiro was like an older brother, and he would be there helping my dad because he was one of the only ones that could reach up on top of this thing to pull that down. You're good. You're perfect. The camera's right here. And it was really a lot of fun. We would go on some amazing camping trips. My dad had a boat called the Skippador. And it was you remember that? It looked, in our minds, it was this huge boat, but I think it was only like 19 feet. 16 feet. It was this little small boat. But Todd and I could sleep down below if we wanted to. And those trips, how many of the folks here actually...
We never slept because we were killing each other, though.
Oh, well, we're trying to hide that news. But how many people here actually went on a trip with my dad and went camping, and we went on the Skippador, went water skiing, we went to
I went camping with him at the Waldorf.
At the Waldorf, yeah. By that time, now my dad has taught me that my favorite campground says Marriott or more on the outside. Yeah. So camping grounds that say Marriott. Okay, so if I'm roughing it, it's Fairfield Inn, but normally it would be the Marriott. But the campgrounds the camp was always fun. The guys would come up on the weekends and tow all our stuff, and they would go back down to work while the women folk and the children caused a ruckus, and we would go boating and water skiing. And I just remember so many fun things that we did as kids, all those trips and every summer. We'd get stuck in the mud. People would fall in the water. I remember the Ed Salzburg stories because the Salzburgs were there as well. And we just always had fun. It seemed it was a 2 or 3 week trip in the summer, but it always felt like more. And it was always better when you were there, Dad.
Thank you.
So I've got a lot of other memories, but the childhood memories with all of our families working together to put the camp together, and all the bike trips and bike riding that we did and all the fun that we had, and then the water skiing. And my dad had a thing called the zip sled, and it was a boogie board with a rope on it, and he would tow that, and we would be on our stomach, and he'd pull it with the boat, and then you get up on your knees and you stand up. It was like my dad was way ahead of his time. He could have called it wakeboarding way back in the 60s. And we did wakeboarding and water skiing. And Steve got up on a single ski the first time he ever went out. So the rest of us weren't quite as good at it. My dad actually took a pair of children's skis and put wood slats between them, because the worst thing, when you were trying to get in the water, your feet would go like this and like this and like that. Yeah. We're going to hand him down to his great-grandchildren. So he always made it fun, and he would tow for 45 minutes if you're up on that thing or on the zip sled. He would. Todd's timing me now. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for such a great childhood and all the childhood memories, and being the guy that you are, Dad. I love you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laney.
Well, fortunately, unlike my father, my memory is fading a little bit, and so my story will be much shorter because I don't remember much back then. But
it was nice to have her remember those things
it was.
for you.
It brought back, it jogged some memories. One funny story that I remember that came to mind when you asked us to think of a funny story that happened a long time ago was right after the first earthquake we had in Northridge. What year was that? Was that? No. 70,
72.
71.
He owned this house and he owned the house in Northridge.
Okay.
They were both in escrow.
So during that time, right after that earthquake, I remember that my dad was in the garage, of course, with his tool belt on, and he was doing some work, and then there was concern, this was right after the earthquake, that the dam was going to break, if you guys remember.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my mom,
Damn, Brent.
Yeah.
my mom was, I don't want to use the word freaking out, but she was concerned about the dam breaking, as everybody was, and apparently, I don't know how much time went by, whether it was a day or two, that they were really concerned that the dam was going to break, and everybody's packing up, moving out. They're like, the cars were getting loaded, this and that, and he's still working the garage. That dam is not going to break, and he was explaining why it wouldn't break, and if it did break, that there would only be 2 inches of water in the street, that there wouldn't be a foot of water in the street.
It was the Van Norman Dam. I just remember that.
It was. I think you're right. So that was kind of a funny story that I just remember, that the whole neighborhood, in my eyes, were panicking about it, but he was just calm as a cucumber and telling us how not to worry, that nothing would happen. And
nothing happened.
And he was right. Like,
Yeah.
he has usually been right.
Normally he's right.
Normally he is. And then just the other memories that I think about frequently as I'm doing things, whether it's at work or at home or whatever, is that his can-do attitude of being able to fix anything. And that's helped me through my career and through everything I do. I'm always like, how did my dad do it? And he taught me to be really open-minded, and that pretty much you could fix anything or you could do anything if you set your mind to it. And I think about that often, so I appreciate it. Love you. Happy birthday. So those were just a couple quick ones. I'm sorry I wasn't as much as Lori's, but or as in depth, but those were some things that I will remember for the rest of my life.
Thank
All
you.
I can
Cut.
say is, him being your father, you turned out to be 2 fabulous kids.
Oh, thank you.
Will you stop crying?
I can't.
You can't talk without crying.
No, when there's a real emotion behind it, I can't do that.
All right, who's up next?
Who's up next?
There's a million stories, but since I can't remember shit, we won't deal with all of
No,
this.
but the most recent.
No, we can go back a little bit. I remember when I had a 54 Plymouth, and it hit 50,000 miles, and the warranty was out. And Bob said, "Bring it over on Galvin, and we'll fix it. We'll rebuild it." And I go, "Rebuild it? What the fuck are you talking about?" So here we are. We stripped this car completely, take everything out of it, and I'm looking at all these pieces and go, "It's never going to go back together again." But 2-3 weeks later, I had the heads ground and the new pistons, and everything worked terrific. So I was, at that point, amazed.
How many extra parts were there on the ground?
There weren't any extra parts. Well, I think he hit them if there were, because I didn't see any extra parts. The only other thing that Galvin that I really remember is he was putting in an electric stove, and he was underneath, and all I hear is shit, and he had a pair of channel locks in his hand. They went out the window, over the neighbor's fence, and I went and got them. They were completely fused. It was a 220 line that he went into. And from that point on, I never touched electricity. Ever.
That's
Ever.
probably why he said to me he doesn't really get into electricity.
Well, that was a really scary thing. The only other really funny story was Lizzie and I were up in the cabin with Bob and Carol, and we were having...
Cut.
No, it's okay. Everybody's adult here, right?
Well, pretty much.
Regardless of how you act.
So,
Regardless of your age.
Yeah.
and I'm the youngest of the group.
Yeah.
So Bob and I go out to get food, and they had this really neat, kind of like a Western restaurant.
The stockade.
The Stockade it was called. It was a pool hall in front and a nice restaurant in the back up in Crestline. So we go and get the food, and we have 2 bags, just loaded styrofoam boxes with dinner and dessert, and
Why didn't you pay for it?
she did.
Probably
No, I think I
Probably
did.
shared it.
Yeah, we usually did.
You actually offered the hotel for the night, so what
Yeah.
can I say?
So we're walking to the car, and these 2 really mangy dogs, they look like wolves almost, are following us. And we're moving faster and faster until we finally get to the car, lock ourselves in, because this food smells really good. So we get back, and we had dinner. It was great.
Everybody had a few drinks.
We had more than a few. I think we had
Liz and
some.
I in our granny nightgowns,
Yeah.
we were pouring hot wax and thinking that was fabulous.
Yeah. And I'm glad they didn't set the place on fire.
Yes.
So we go to bed, and I hear we gave Bob and Carol the master bedroom, and we took the sleeper couch.
Which was just a,
Hey, are you telling this or am
it
I?
was a little thin wall away.
It wasn't such a thin wall away. They sounded like they were having a really good time. And then all I hear is Bob going, "I'm finished.
He says, I'm done.
I'm done."
He said it in a stage whisper, I'm done.
And you can hear it across the block. And I hear her giggling away like, "Oh my God, he's never done that before."
He never did it before or said it.
But that was
No, he never said it.
memorable occasion. Love you, Bob.
Matthew's thinking, this is more information I need to know about my grandfather. He's cracking up
It's
over
all right.
here.
It's all right.
Okay, Gary, you're up.
All right. I have a memory that's probably worse than Alan's.
Uh-oh.
But
You mean your memory's bad or this?
I can't actually remember when this started. But Bob and I, when we were on Holt Avenue, we must have been in the same bedroom. Okay, I was bunked
Might
with
have
Bob,
been.
Alan, and Steve were bunked in another bedroom. And Bob had, have you ever seen those, I don't know, white ceramic piggy banks you buy in Tijuana? They're cheap and they're painted weird colors. Well, Bob had that and he used to keep his change in it. Well, I grew up with Maury and Bessie as parents, so my allowance was negative. So I said, I bet I can get some money out of this bank and I can use it to buy candy or whatever. So I'm shaking the bank. I go, just won't come out. So I take the little slot and make it a little bigger. And pretty soon I could get like nickels and dimes out. And I'm thinking, if I make it a little bigger, he won't notice it. So it was about this big. I was maybe 5 or 6, I don't know. And Bob never said a word. Never said a word. I'm sure you must have noticed.
No, but we'd like to collect on
Plus interest.
So the other thing is I spent innumerable hours with Bob working on cabinets for Val and Jim and building other people's cabinets with you and learning how to use the shop and doing all this stuff in Bob's house on Galvin and working with him just all over the place. So that was really valuable.
Thank you.
You
That's
used
it.
to build your house.
Should I tell a story about Alan now?
Right.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
All right, as long as I'm here.
As long as you're in the seat.
Alan went. I'm trying to think how that started. We were on Durango Street. You remember that? You remember Durango Street? And I'm trying to think. I was about 15, 16 or something like that.
No, you weren't that old.
13, 14. I don't. It had to be old enough to be a.
I think I was 6.
Because you were older. You were. You know what? You were maybe. Al was maybe 18 or 19, maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, so I would have put me around
Same story.
13 or 14. Is right. So he went with a friend, Marshall. Was it Marshall?
Yeah.
And they met a couple girls in Arrowhead. Is that right?
Boy, I don't remember that. But
Arrowhead. So they
Good, were you?
they all come.
Sound really good.
They all come back to the house, Durango, and her name was Jerry,
Yeah.
his first wife, as it turned out to be later on.
Big mistake.
And when I opened the door and I see this woman getting out of the car, and I said, "Where did you pick her up?"
Arrowhead.
Yeah. So that's my story about Alan. Plus all the fighting we must have
It
done.
was doomed to failure when you're beginning like that.
Huh?
Well, I have a story. About
that's
Alan and Bob.
Okay.
Alan and Bob. So one time we had a party and we had the Lapidus family over, all the kids, and I think that Steve was there and Gary. I don't know. We must have had 20 people over at at the house in the pool swimming, and Dad and Alan decided we needed new barbecues. Do you remember the barbecue story, Al? So you guys went to like a Home Depot kind of place. They came back with 2 Weber barbecues, and probably one still burning in the backyard.
The
But
old one's still in the backyard.
yeah, so they bought these 2 barbecues, and it was like 4 o'clock, and they started putting them together. So have anyone ever here put together barbecue? You open it up, and there's like 500 pieces. Well, they opened them both up at the same time, and they had 1,000 pieces. And they were going to use these barbecues to make dinner. Barbecue chicken and ribs and corn, whatever. And we were all in the pool swimming, and the 2 of them are busy working, and it's 6 o'clock, and my mom's like, when are we going to eat? When are we going to be able to barbecue? They're like, oh yeah, soon. Well, 7 o'clock rolls around. My mom is not happy. There's a bunch of hungry people. They've got all this chicken. My dad would make all this chicken in bowls, and it was ready to cook. And Alan and Dad were still struggling trying to get the barbecues. And finally, about 8 o'clock, when I thought my mom was going to start baking the chicken, they got them done. But they had that's why I asked you about the parts, because there was 20 different parts sitting on a pile, and they couldn't figure out what they were supposed to do with them. But they fired up the barbecue, and they worked, and we actually, I think, ate at 9 o'clock or something like that. But that was you don't remember that, Al?
No.
Oh my God, I just remember all these parts going, how the heck are they going to put these barbecues together? So those are the kind of fun things that we would experience with my dad, who could make anything out of anything. I don't know. And plus the duct tape, we maybe need to mention his extensive use of duct tape in any scenario and situation at all. So I'm sure there was duct tape on the barbecues. I haven't checked. I'm waiting for
Well, I'm going to break in here. A lot of my memories overlap Lori's. I really had a great time on all those camping trips that we took. It kind of, not only the camping trips, but it really started me on a lifelong love of nature and camping, and which I pursued with my friends in high school, and then with my family also. And I had all the tricks of the trade as far as car camping and being comfortable, because we were very comfortable, or as comfortable as you could be. And also all the time that we spent in that garage in Galvin. Mostly I was watching Gary and you do projects, but it was great family fun. And
Did he give you your first handsaw?
I didn't say
Probably.
hand
I'm glad
job.
you said
No. Handsaw. The handsaw.
No,
I even got that one.
but I have that reminds me of a great memory of Gary, but that'll have to wait.
Not my birthday.
And I'll talk about Alan just a little bit. I don't really have any particular stories, except, I do remember one that, I don't have any great stories, any positive stories.
Make it a great story.
I don't mean that.
Make it a
I mean, Alan has been a great, always really generous to me, and I really appreciate and love him. But one story I remember is he was painting his first house, I think, on, I don't know what street it was, in the valley, when he was newlywed with Jerry. And my mother we always went and visited them, whether we were welcomed or not, invited or not, unannounced. And so we went over there, and I either was in the way or I was asked to help, and he was painting the exterior of the house, and I remember stepping in and knocking over a full gallon of paint. He was not too happy.
No, but I remember not being happy.
Anyway, okay, I have a really good memory. It's one of my best memories of my whole life. And that is, and we're hearing all these stories about how helpful you are and you're Mr. Fix-It and things like that. And when I first moved into a house with Todd, before we got married, I remember I was moving in, Todd wasn't there, and I was really busy getting myself settled in and everything else, and you pulled up in your car, and you walked in and you said, "Hey, Diane, what can I do to help you?" I said, "Well, I don't know," and you said, "Well, let me just take a look around here." And you put this belt on. You had a belt, and you had a bucket of everything you might need, and we walked around the house, And you asked me, hey, do you like this? Or do you like this kind of a switch? Or we can fix this, or we can do this a little different. And I just remember feeling so special. And you really did that for me. And I'll never forget that. So I wanted to tell you that. Mwah. Love you.
That's better than Todd's story.
Okay.
All right. Well, I kind of went to the first memory I have of you, and
Uh-oh.
yeah, but we were driving.
His memory's still pretty good, huh?
Mine's not either. But we were driving. I think you were taking us fishing or something. My mom was in the front seat, and you were in the front seat, and I think me and my friend were in the back seat. And I looked over out the window, and I'm like, there's this blue car next to us, and I'm like, God, that's a fucking ugly car. I didn't say fuck, but I said, that's an ugly car next to us. And I looked up, and you go, Sean? And I look up, and I see your eyes in the rearview mirror. You're like, do you know what kind of car that is? I said, no. You go, that's a Delta 88. Or no, was it? Olds 88.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. And you said, do you know what kind of car this is? I said, no. It's an Olds 88.
Smart
And
guy.
I was like, oops. And then a couple minutes later, I'm fooling around, and I made some inappropriate Jewish reference, and and they said Sean, and I saw your eyes in the rearview mirror again. and I learned that day you were Jewish.
There you go.
I didn't know.
I did not keep it a secret, the subject never came up.
But I still remember that, and I just want to say, I had a hard time accepting you and your family for a long time, but you've always just been loving and supportive of me, and even when I didn't want it, and you, Alan, you too. I remember going to your house, and you always made me feel welcome, and it was me. I always felt like an outsider and stuff, but I don't feel like that today, and
Thank you.
and I love you, and the best thing about you is how you've treated my mom, and you've been a wonderful husband to her, and she couldn't have found anybody better. And
All right.
and I love you for that. So, thank you.
Just get up.
I'll move out of the way.
But at one time was ready for some very serious surgery, one of many, and we were talking about that time. You had to pay for your transfusions. If you needed one, you had to pay money, or you needed someone to donate it. And at the time they were talking about it, and no one ever asked Bob. I didn't even know he knew, but he came over and he said, where should I go and at what time? Never asked, never said a word. And at that time, it made me feel very special. And I thought, okay, having some of his blood, I'll get better in a hurry. So happened that I was able to use my own, but there was a man who never asked, never knew, just said, where should I go and at what time? That's Bob. Just a gentle man, and I thank you. I've known you a long time.
What everyone is saying, well, I can't remember.
Thank you.
So I have to write papers. The poignancy of what everyone is saying, I think, is real clear. What a wonderful person you are, Bob.
Thank you.
And I'll just give my memories just to Bob. Because he was the first child of his family, of his mother and his mother's two brothers, he was always the most revered by the whole family. That was my memory of you growing up. And you were only 10 years older than me, but you were kind of in that magical place of being a grown up, but not exactly, because you were a child as well. And I remember the time when Bob drove to Alaska. It was like he drove to Alaska. And we heard the stories of your being in Alaska.
I guess we got postcards. Your mom got postcards, and everybody was tracking your trip to Alaska. And then you came back.
Yes, yeah.
You came back. You came back from Alaska. It was just mind-boggling to me. And that house on Holt, we would go over there, and I have that same memory that I forgot who said it. Coming there one day, and there was a car was taken apart, and the engine was on the grass and on the driveway. And it was like, he took apart the car. It was. I remember it was godlike to me. And he rolled. He was in the house. He was the adult for everybody. He was almost the adult for the family. I think you were not a kid, and everybody deferred to you. All the adults deferred to you. I mean, it was remarkable. My father treated you differently. Everyone treated you differently. I have such clear memories of that. And I also, you were always kind, but you were always stern, and you kind of looked over everybody. And everybody kind of needed your approval. All the cousins did.
Oh, with this kind of group, I've got to.
Yeah, well, and the other memories I have of just that, Joanne didn't. Joanne, she kind of was closer to you in the pecking order of the family, and everybody else was by age group, and I just remember how Alan treated Gary. And I remember always thinking as a kid, Alan treats Gary like Marty treats me.
That's funny.
And then Alan, my memories were totally different.
That's beautiful.
Because Alan was 2 years younger than me, so in the pecking order, he was...
You were expecting to be revered, but you were...
No, he was my wise guy younger cousin. And the memories mostly I have of Alan was him always chasing Gary and Gary running away. Gary would say something and Alan would chase him.
Was it nice?
I mean, it was, the code of children was a very regimented omerta based on age and physical size. So the older brothers beat up on the younger brothers, but Bob, you were always there to kind of be there to keep things fairly even. That memory is always there.
I just want to know where Bessie and Maury were.
Well, they were there. They were always there. And the house, and I remember the house on Holt. You always knew the house on Holt. You always knew where to go because the runners were there. The plastic runners were on the floor, and the plastic was on the couches. And 30 years later, when those couches were given away, they were in perfect condition. Those are my memories.
Oh, that was great.
Very good.
Nice.
Thank you.
I love it. All right, Matthew.
I didn't learn until much later what a good, kind person you are. And even until I was an adult,
Much later.
it wasn't until I was an adult older that I realized what a good, kind, giving person you were as well.
You
You know,
had
I
to
had
get
the same
past,
experience.
you had to get past that
Much older.
asshole stage that he was in for a long time.
You know what? I didn't say anything about Alan. I'm sorry. And I wanted to say
Oh, I bet you
something.
do. haven't you?
No, I really no. Oh, yes, but I'm not going to go there. Well, okay. And I did share this, but everybody knows this. I think the first time I ever met you, you actually walked up to me and grabbed me right here. Nice to meet ya.
Come in, Cookie.
Those are your best features.
And then all I heard was, "That's okay. That's just Uncle Al." That's what he does. I'm like, okay, I guess I've got to go with
See,
it.
Wendy, how much better I've gotten?
So yeah,
At least I was warned.
Yeah.
She wasn't warned.
I had been warned all all girls that I would bring over to a first family party.
Yeah.
I would always have to run out. Well, there was one guy there. He's my uncle. I had to explain describe what he looked like, and said, he's probably going to grab your ass or your boobs. One of the two. Yeah, he doesn't mean anything, about it, but it's just fun.
Diane, did he go, nice to meet you, or nice to meet you?
I don't remember because it was so shocking. You know,
I
Look
remember
at her now. She's come out of her little shell.
whatever. You know, it doesn't matter.
When Karen met Ernest,
Yeah.
she didn't let him meet her. Or
Yeah.
meet Ernest for a long time.
Was he going to
Only
do that to
because-
Ernest too?
Well, he did.
Or do something to
Him and
Ernest?
Ernest are a little different.
Well, obviously, you're not sounding very good with that
It's
story.
backwards. Yeah, it's a little
Well, but
in reverse.
then and we all know those stories about Alan. But I wanted to say too that somebody said something about I didn't know how nice of a person you are till I got older. And that's really how I'm feeling, and I wanted to tell that too, that I think it's really special how you've always been a really good example as far as family and what you do for so many kids. And it's been really neat to see that. So I just wanted to say that I admire that about you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Grandpa, happy birthday. So my grandpa, Bob Shapiro, is the coolest man I know for sure. I've learned so many things from him directly and indirectly, like either directly from him or passed on through my dad. And I'm kind of nervous, I guess, just because I'm emotional because you're awesome. But I think what I've learned most from you is how to deal with people. And I know that you're really, really good with people, and everyone loves you because you can connect with so many different people. And we've talked my whole life, and every time I have a problem with people, you've always encouraged me that for the most part, people are generally really good. And then there's some assholes that'll never be good, but most people are really cool. And I've kind of carried that mentality with me my whole life. And every time I meet someone who is an asshole, I'll think either you're just being an asshole or you can really come around. But I've just always kind of remembered that you said people, people, people. People. There's so many different personalities and so many different people, and I think if you weren't my grandfather, I wouldn't have had so many great relationships with so many people in my life, because I know that they're generally good people, and everyone loves you, and I love you. Happy birthday. Thank you for teaching me everything.
Yeah, thank you, man.
This is a big thing, so I should have thought of it earlier. But Bob, first of all, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And secondly, I get a little sentimental too. If it wasn't for you and Al, and actually Earl too, but all of you helped us put on our wedding, and you were just perfectly welcoming and fine about us getting married in your house. And because Gary and I had nowhere to get married, and we had no money, and my parents had no money, and I don't know, your parents didn't offer.
I did.
So, you did. And we had a fabulous wedding, and without you and your generosity, we wouldn't have had the kind of wedding that we had. And it was right, and it's so to me significant because you're here today, and this is where it was, and it was wonderful. And thank you.
Above the
Thank you.
jacuzzi.
So was your wedding the,
Well, I figured I'd have you.
I have a memory of Bob, and some of you were present when this happened. It was at, I think, Julius's party, and it was at the tennis club, and we were all sitting at a table, and all of a sudden Bob goes like that.
oh yeah.
And we didn't know what had happened, and he had passed out, and he fell on the floor, and Earl and some others lifted up his head so that he could breathe. And then Bob woke up and he said, "Where are the 72 virgins?" He really did. He unbelievable.
way.
I'll never forget that. I'll never ever forget it. It was so. It was great. And with Alan, I have a memory of you when I first met you because you were into collecting pigs.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. He and Lizzie.
And you had a belt that had a buckle of a pig. And you had pigs like all over in your house. And I remember, I know. And I remember thinking, I never knew anyone who collected pigs, but I do remember that about you.
Couldn't fit him.
But, but for both of you, I have to say, you've always made me feel very welcome in the family. You're both kind, you're both generous, and you're both wonderful people. And happy birthday.
Thank you. Jewish pig collectors.
Great first name. Gotta love your first name. So I remember, I think one of your last woodworking projects was helping me make these geocaching containers out of these gnarled pieces of wood, and you set up the drill press and you were finding all these different blades to go in to make this round hole and this gnarly chunk of decayed old breaking down wood, but we got it to go so it would fit this film canister in there, and we had some magnets and everything else. And then it's all these amazing stories I've heard in the last 10 years, from the Alaska trip to I just wish somebody could remember the whole story of how you got into that barbecue sauce business.
He just really liked it, and he happened to meet the guy.
Yeah, but it was like,
He liked the guy, and the guy needed a machine.
and he didn't pay him for the longest time, so you're getting gallons and gallons of barbecue sauce in lieu of getting paid cash. And it was just a great story. And I remember, first dating Lori, and then coming up to the 150-person 4th of July party and just getting welcomed into this extraordinary extended family, which has just been fantastic. And the final thing is, thank you for your daughter. She has made a big difference in my life.
Thank you for my daughter.
Happy birthday.
Who's missing?
You throw the best 4th of July parties.
Yeah. I would love to do it again.
I don't like the sound of that.
That's it. That's all.
Well, you have a short memory.
Sounds
like a family problem.
He was too young.
Yeah.
But I have a question. It doesn't have to be, the most recent member of this group is Wendy, and even she will come up with something, I have no doubt. So, in your experience of we've all been around, you must have developed some experience or opinion of Uncle Bob?
Well, I liked Uncle Bob because he was into computers, and I was into computers, and he had all this software, and I just thought, wait, how does he do construction or building or engineering and all this computer stuff too? Because I know the computer stuff, but I had no idea about the other stuff. So I really didn't have the closest relationship to Uncle Bob, but in all my experiences with him, he's been awesome. And this has actually been the most insightful into his life.
Yes, it would be.
This has been, I'm very glad I came, because I did not know this whole backstory about my uncle, to be honest.
Yeah.
So this has been the best. This has been the best. Yeah, this has been the best experience.
According to Lori, he was one of the early adopters, or the first adopters, of just about everything that came out.
Yeah, I don't know how he.
We still have upstairs the first fax machine. The one that you put your master on this roller, and it took 6 minutes for that needle to go like this, and then for some image to show up someplace else. That's if it agreed with whatever.
Keeping that for some good reason, Carol?
I just haven't gotten in that corner for a while. Yeah.
Let's just say Todd and I always benefited by my father's love for technology. He never liked to buy one of anything. So if Todd and I were with him at, whether it's Fry's or Circuit City or any of those other electronic stores, he'd buy 3, one for me, one for Todd, and one for himself. And
he did the same thing when he and I started dating. My little house in Canoga Park. He shows up on a Saturday and he's carrying a desk because he thought I needed a desk. He saw a pretty picture somewhere that a woman had painted, an old lady probably my age now, had painted a picture of these beautiful birds on a branch. He liked it, so he got one for him and one for me. Let's see, my microwave wasn't good enough, so he'd have to get me a better microwave.
You bought us our first microwave.
Yes, he did.
On the condition that you could blow up an egg in it.
So speaking of microwaves, my dad was the first one in our family, anybody that we knew that got this microwave, and he couldn't have been more proud of this microwave. He would invite people over. He'd buy dozens of bagels at Western Bagels and throw them in the freezer just so we could show them that he could defrost a bagel in 20 seconds in this contraption in the kitchen. And he would try all kinds of other fun things, but he was really excited to show, like, everybody who came in the door, come see the microwave, pull out a Western bagel, and throw it in the microwave, and poof, it would be defrosted in 20 seconds. So we had that. He had a 007 camera. He would take pictures of his job sites with it. He had the first calculator.
Oh, do you remember his Hewlett-Packard calculator watch? It was
Oh,
stood
yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
It stood this high. It was
It's
a
up in
little,
the drawer on the left.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, and it's really heavy, but I mean, it was actually this little keyboard, and that was amazing, always.
Growing up, everyone always thought my dad was cool because of the technology. He used to always be the
Yes.
first to have everything. And
Yes, yeah.
Did your dad have an early color TV? What about that?
Probably. I mean, we had color TV, but the one thing he didn't have, and I never figured out, a stereo, a system that had 2 speakers. He said, "I have a stereo," and he'd point to one speaker. It just wasn't a stereo, and he just never got into music. He wasn't into rock and roll or music or anything, so it wasn't important to have that big sound coming out of 2 speakers. He had a beautiful cabinet and it had 1 speaker, and I couldn't figure out what the heck is up with that. Growing up in rock and roll age, my dad just wasn't into the music. It wasn't his thing. He'd rather go build something than sit and listen to music.
No money.
No, it had nothing to do with no money. It just wasn't.
No money.
You had money.
I just remembered another really cool story that I know Matthew and maybe David would appreciate, and some other people in the room. I don't know, but Penny, cover your ears. But my friends always thought my dad was super cool.
Yes.
My dad was super cool because there was one time in my life or at an age where my dad would like to smoke a little funny stuff. So my dad.
Why are you throwing me under the bus on this?
Because you're young.
Matthew's young too.
So when we were young, when you'd buy pot, we would buy like little bits of pot. But my dad was like, "Hey, how much is that stuff?" And whatever the price was, he'd be like, "Yeah, I want a whole ounce." You know, they're like, "Whoa, your dad would buy a whole ounce." And they thought that was so awesome, so we'd sell them an ounce. And then my friends and I would sell him an ounce, and then there's a little saying that a friend with weed is a friend indeed, and I would kind of locate that pot, and over time I would take a little tiny bit at a time, little pieces.
That's the same as the bank story.
Little pieces at a time, and then like about a month or 2 later, he'd go, "Hey, what happened to that? I need another one of those." So I'd get it, and then we would pinch a little piece, and then a little bit, and then all of a sudden I come in.
That's what happened, Bob.
Yeah, and I got some of this really cool, like these Thai sticks. You want to check them out? Yeah, how much is that? All right, I'll take a bunch of those. We do it, and then every time we would get low on pot as kids, then somebody would say, "Does your dad need to buy some pot?" There's a little inside funny story about you guys.
How when we went to Europe, and we went to Amsterdam in Europe, and we went to a street. There was a guy in a street corner selling hash, and we bought a chunk of hash, And then we took it back to the hotel, and we were like rigging it up underneath glass with a pin. And Dad's like, "What are you doing?" Just smoking this stuff. And it was like, he's like, "Well, let me try it too." And I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty crazy." Because in Amsterdam, it's legal. You know, they just sell hash on a street corner.
I don't think he ever even smoked it because it was always there when I needed it.
You needed it. That's a great story.
Yeah, I needed it.
That's a great story.
It's a true story.
So where are we?
By the way,
Well-
Bob didn't just buy technological things in multi-packs. He used to like to go to Kirkland at Costco and buy Kirkland things. So one day, Al and Steve and myself and Bob all had nice leather jackets from Costco. I don't know how many he bought.
Yes.
Those were great.
They're great jackets.
It's funny as you guys are talking,
Well,
it
I
jogs
think this
back
all
those
comes
memories.
around to the fact that my dad is probably the most generous person on the planet. My friends would jump up and down when they knew my dad was making barbecue chicken. He would invite anybody who wanted to come and have barbecue chicken. Whenever they had tickets for the theater, I loved it because Todd didn't like to go. So that meant I get to invite a friend, and then we would go to dinner, and Dad wouldn't allow anybody else to pay the bill. And there were some people that left their hands down at their sides, and other people tried to argue with him, but he would refuse to allow somebody to pay for a meal. He is the most generous person.
He lets me pay.
Well, that's only because you fight it so hard. It becomes like a fun game, you know. It's like, all right.
Actually, I enjoy it.
You do now. Now you do. Now you do. But I think just with my dad, he just liked it. He just knew the people that were trying to fight really wanting to pay. My friends would say, "Can we just buy you dinner?" I'm like, "Nope, buy somebody else dinner." And he's always been.
And the thing that always got
the most
me
generous.
about his generosity is he never lauded it about. I mean, he just kind of did it, and because he could afford it. I mean, I assume that he knew he could to do it, but he never made anybody feel less than themselves because he did it. He just did it out of the generosity of his spirit, and he still does. Yeah.
One other thing, as I'm hearing all the stories that makes me bring back some more memories, is I just want to let you know that a lot of your Shapiro people. And then the other one he always says is, people don't change. And every time we have a problem at work, my general manager looks at me and goes, people don't change.
That's right. That's right. That's a Shapiroism. That's a Shapiroism. Yeah.
Whatever they are when they're young, they'll be that much worse when they're older. Exactly.
I remember when Todd started at Decor that they didn't realize that when they hired Todd, they also hired Robert Shapiro.
Yes, true.
I mean, it was like, boom, next thing you know, they decide they're going to open this plant in North Carolina. And my dad is finding the location and making sure it was big enough and had the power. Just everything he did for his professional career, he helped Todd find the building and set up the building for the plant that they put together.
Well, you had to come fix my house out there, too.
Yeah, right.
And I still use a lot of the methods that he taught me for project management today. So
Yeah.
Like what?
And they work.
they do
They
work.
still work.
Yeah.
Like what?
Like what? I was gonna ask that too.
Oh, like I just helped my friend start a shop, and just the way we lay out, get all the equipment lists and all the utility stuff for the equipment, and he taught me how to put all that together, and then do all the layouts and all the space planning and stuff that he taught me when I worked for him before Decor, and then the Decor projects were really a great learning experience for me, and the owners of our company had the utmost respect for him and his work quality and his work ethics. Nobody would ever outwork him. He was a really hard worker, morning, noon, and night. Because he loved it. Everything he did, he put his heart and soul into it, and he liked it.
I have to tell you, just yesterday, I showed him, I said, I used one of his methods in all the stuff we're doing in the house. I made myself a spreadsheet for all the doors in our house so that I knew what kind of lock it was going to take, how many hinges, whether it was this, that, and the other thing. And I did it on the computer, and then Nacho and I went around to make sure that what I did was right. I did it all from memory. I missed the 2 doors on the safe cupboard over here under the stairs. And I showed, now you know where look, if you can get it out, there's nothing in it. If you can get it out, it weighs 800 pounds. But anyway, I showed it to Bob just yesterday. I said, look at this. This is the way you would have done it, and that's the way I did it, because otherwise you just get all screwed up.
I do the same thing every time I'm doing it. How would he do it? Oh, what do you think? You know,
Yes.
and I would always ask myself that.
Yeah. And they're simple ways, just common sense, and it just works.
The only thing I wish I didn't get were the shopping habits, because every time I go to Costco, it's like, my dad would never buy one. In my head, I'm like, I gotta buy two, or I gotta buy three.
That's another Shapiro, he would say, if you need one, you need two.
So I buy a lot of stuff because of him.
That's right.
It's not my fault.
I know.
So that's where
True.
his little brother gets it.
So,
Well, between the two of them,
It
I
kept
believe I-
Costco running.
So the only
I still
people
do.
missing so far are Terry and Wendy and me.
Oh, you're
right?
Well, you
Hey,
know.
Bob, how are you feeling now?
You don't have.
How
they
are you
don't want
feeling?
to.
No.
Oh, I do.
Feeling good.
I do. I'm a little.
You're two.
Oh, that's right.
I'm late in the family, but I'll tell you what. This has been very emotional because I can see all of this in my brother-in-law's eyes, and I can see that this man was as great as I believe he is, because he is that way to me. And him and Carol were the first ones I ever met, and this family is just outrageous. I mean, they are Shapiros, and they are everybody that is connected to them, and they are a lot of their own, and they're very strong, and I'm so happy with this guy. And
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
Most
we
of the
all
time.
have our moments, and but I love them, and I went through 2 years of learning names and learning their personalities, and I found out I had to sit with each one of you to remember. And Bob has he calls me Smiley all the time, and he's just been very special to me. And I lost my brother in 2005, and he's been a very good brother to me, and he's, you know, and
Here we go.
I know, I cried through everybody else's because I'm going, God, I miss so much, but I know the right person was here at the right time.
Yeah.
Her name's Liz, and you guys are just so great.
It's an extraordinary group of people.
Yes, it is.
Everybody in this room is just an extraordinary person in your own right, and the way we all fit together with all our jagged edges is amazing.
This is a happy time.
I know it is.
It's the happy tears.
Yes.
Well, Carol,
I think it's Wendy. Are you willing?
I will just say I think is the newest member of this group here. To thank you, Bob, for being welcoming to me. I've gotten to know you mostly over omelets.
Joseph's.
Omelets at Joseph's, and I think I know what you prefer, but you know, I have the vegetarian. You don't. You have the. But thank you for you know, just allowing me to be part of your family, and for being so welcoming, and you know, making this beautiful home that everybody has so many nice memories and gatherings and visits. So I really appreciate it, and thank you for allowing me to be part of that. And happy birthday.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
What about Alan?
Wendy, just I was going to say, what about Alan? What can you say about Alan, right?
It's a good squeeze. He gets a great squeeze.
It's a good squeeze.
I've got to
happy
say, the first thing I remembered about him, because of your squeeze thing, is I was coming home from an appointment, and we had met online, and he got sick, and you know, he didn't have a voice, and he was always out with Bob and Carol every Saturday, so we hadn't met yet. And so I was coming home from an appointment late, and I called him up and I said, I really want to meet you, you know. And so he goes, but I can't speak. And I'm going, no, I'm coming home, and meet me at Cold Stone. We decided on Cold Stone over in the Commons, because I lived off Mulholland, or witchmadigger. Anyway, so we get there and he hugged me. And I had met a couple of guys that, I mean, it was just not the same. It was just that he wore the leather jacket and he hugged me, and oh my God, it was just like, oh my God. And I didn't know anything except we had a lot of long conversations. And, but Bob and Carol were introduced to me every Saturday. I'm leaving, and Joanne, and I'm leaving with my sister and my brother and my sister-in-law, Bob and Carol and Joanne. And I knew these people before I had ever met him. I mean, they were part of his life, and that hold, that hug, that it was just like this.
He hugs you.
This
And
is
you
exactly the one, the squeeze I was talking about.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I have no idea where to begin, and probably have no idea where to end. I will say this.
Carol, can you move over here because
Sure.
that light?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Excuse me. You just got one boob right in the middle of your lens there.
He'll let it out.
Which boob was that? Was that boob one?
No,
Boob two?
that it was boob right. Boob right.
This one.
Okay. The first time I ever met Bob, I met him through the company that I worked for. I was office manager for a management consulting firm. And the first time I ever spoke to him was on the telephone. And I had called him to tell him his expense report was wrong. And I was expecting him to be a prima donna like all the other consultants that were on staff. And when I called him and I explained what the mistake was, he says, well, go ahead and fix it. And I said, well, okay. But I expected him to be affronted by it, to be pissed off at me, to say something, and he was just the way it turns out the way he lives his life was just, well, just go ahead and fix it. It's not a big deal. And then to actually meet him, I lived over in Canoga Park. He lived here. And there were some drawings that they wanted Bob to have. So I said, well, I'll just deliver them on the way home, right? So I drove up to this house with these drawings, and I came in. We sat in those chairs, different upholstery, but we sat in the chairs in there. Offered me a drink. I had a drink. Sat and chewed the fat for 2 hours, and I left the drawings. And when I got in my car in front of the house to go home, I said, "That is the nicest man I have ever met in my life," and he still is. No offense to anybody else, but he really is just.
How about an offense?
An offense, yeah. You got a good offense too, sweetheart. And he just is all the things that everybody has said. I told you about how when we dated, I needed to have at least as good as he had, which is why when we joined households, we had double of everything. But Bob was a workaholic. He loved everything. You were talking about things that he did when I was doing my tap dancing. He got into video, and he would go over and he would video all my shows, and then he transcribed them and make copies of the videotapes for every dancer in the group, and he just spent hours on it. And then he and I got into our deal of the Shapiro, including Taylor Personal Productions.
Shit PP.
Yep. Also known as Shit PP. Right. And that's how we started putting slideshows together. I mean, this is way before automation and fancy computers. It was like he's pushing a button over here, and I had to push the button over here to make the music go or to do whatever, And it's been a wonderful experience so far, and it continues to be. He's the love of my life. I tried it twice before him and never found somebody who... I had a girlfriend once say to me that she needed to find a man who could do more for her than she could do for herself. And I realized that that's what I was looking for, and I never found that in the first two. And when I met Bob, he could do anything, he could do everything, and he would do anything and everything for you. And it was just extraordinary, just extraordinary. And we were together 23 years. And then in January of '02, he was sick with the flu. And I looked, and he was being a good patient. He wasn't being bad. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I think I'm ready to commit to this guy. And we'd talked about getting married back and forth at different times. And then neither one of us, I knew he was never going to ask again. And so I thought, I'm ready to do this. Because the other thing is you get older and you don't have any legal rights to even talk to somebody in the hospital. And so we went to New Orleans with Alan and Terry.
No, Liz.
Liz.
I'm sorry, that's the first time I made that mistake. My apologies. Okay, Liz, you must have done that on purpose. I don't know. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so I waited until we found this really nasty, greasy spoon, and their advertisement was for this pancake that overflowed the plate like this. It just hung over the edges.
Place stabbed with love.
Yes, and so he's sitting there, and he gets the first bite in his mouth, and I said, I think we ought to get married. And he goes, okay. And I said, did you hear what I said? He said, yep. I said, oh, okay. And the next two, we saw Al and Liz on the street, and we said,
What year was that you met him? You drove up here? What year was that?
That would have been in the fall of '79. Yeah.
So I'm curious if you're willing to share, how did the second and third date occur?
He invited me over for some of his chicken.
That chicken.
The chicken and the jacuzzi.
Look how red she is.
I just. Oh, you see this?
Pretty fast moving.
Yes.
What came first, the chicken or the jacuzzi?
Well, I don't know.
Like there was no more pot with the
Yes, no. It was, and I was, when people were talking about tools and all that stuff, when we had, when we had the big earthquake.
That's not true.
I didn't know this, but Bob's reputation was known far and wide in the neighborhood. We didn't know a lot of people just because of the hill. I didn't know a lot of people. We had strangers coming down the street. Who's Bob Shapiro? I understand he's got this tool. And so, you help somebody out and you give them a tool and whatever, but it was amazing to me that, his fame was far and wide. Oh, the only other thing I can say, when I first met Bob, when he came into the office that time, I remember thinking to myself, oh, he looks like Mr. Milquetoast. He seems very quiet. All the other management consultants guys were,
Swagger
and all that, all that stuff. And here was Bob, just very quiet, just there and doing his thing and whatever. And I thought, but boy, turns out everything was there. It just wasn't a big fireworks. He just didn't make a lot of noise about it. So
Best damn consultant in the world.
Yes, he was. And before I leave the podium, is Alan still here?
Yep.
Okay. When he and I first started dating, and then he warned me about you.
Everybody does.
And the only reason you didn't grab me instantly that way was because we were already in a car and you couldn't get to me, okay? But it was, he told me, he says, look out for my brother, he's an asshole.
I agree. I think...
I even warned Bob about Al.
I gotta get close for this one.
But you are so mellow now.
Uh-oh, you better be.
This one's gonna be good. This one's gonna be good. Whenever I embarrass her, she gets purple. Okay, but her nipples get hard as a rock.
Oh, this is TMI.
I took my keys out and literally tried to hang them, and they fell to the floor. So it wasn't as hard as I thought.
Oh, jeez, Al.
Okay. Oh boy, are you kidding? This is an Academy Award winning film right here.
It could be.
Yes. Anyway, guys, I just, I think we could go on singing this man's praises. I could.
And mine too.
And yours too.
Why not?
Yes.
The night is still young.
Where the hell am I?
Oh, but you know what? Yvette, how was the ice cream?
Why do you ask Yvette? Yvette could have said something about Dad.
Oh, Yvette, you
I'll get
should
it,
come
I'll
and
get it.
say something because you've been through so much with us. Come on.
Why not?
Come on.
Bring her on.
I might start.
You can start crying. Join the rest of us.
Because I think after Lord
You want to sit?
being breast.
It's okay.
You should sit down. You want to sit
No,
down
I'll
here?
You can sit
No,
in my
I'll sit right-
sit on my
I'll
lap.
sit right next to you.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, I think I've been knowing this family for over 20 some years.
Yes, you have.
I've seen the kids grow up,
Yep.
watch their kids.
We're not having a crying hour.
No, I'm not trying not to. But Bob and Al are sweethearts.
Yes, they are.
I didn't know Bob was from Cleveland, and that's where I'm from. And I found out when we had that big party for you in San Diego.
No, the 70th birthday.
Yeah.
Calabasas.
Oh, yeah.
Same difference.
And then we found out, well, by him living in Ohio, which I didn't know, and that's my home. But then the coincidence that I'm living not too far from where you all used to live on Hope.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So I got a lot of history with this family, but really, they're like family. And I love all of you.
Yes, and we love
Oh,
you.
sweet.
There's no two ways about it.
Thank you.
And this lady, in my opinion, she saved my bacon and my life and my stress level for all those 20 years.
Can I have this?
It belongs to you already, sweetheart. Yeah, my first person, I hadn't spoken to her probably in a year and a half or two, and I'm thinking about today, and I went, I need to have her here. And I thought, God, I hope she's in town.
And she's been on my mind.
Yeah, and so fortunately, she said yes.
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 Oh, there was no way I was going to say no.
Yeah.
Very easy
Yes.
to get attached to as part of the
Yes,
family,
yes,
I
yes,
must say.
yes.
I love
As a new
everybody.
newbie.
Yes,
And I mean, everybody isn't even here.
that's right.
Of all the people I have.
Yes.
But
No,
this is a beautiful family.
it's an extraordinary family.
Yeah.
And you are all commended for continuing the tradition of being a wonderful part of it. Yeah, there isn't a bad soul here.
No,
Thank you.
not at all.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a wonderful man.
Wonderful man. An old guy's rule.
Nice shirt,
Okay.
Dad.
Yeah, this is a wonderful shirt. You can take a stretch, and dessert is coming. Dessert is coming.
Yeah, we just took it out. You have a lighter.
Matthew, can I get a copy of that disc at some point?
Yes, you can. I'll edit it, color it, and I'll send it over.
So she's working she's not working as a.
Sing happy birthday.
Come on, sing.
1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. Happy birthday, dear Bob and Ellen. Happy birthday to you.
All of you.
Ready, Bob? Let's do the expression. Blow.
I'm not his keeper.
You
I don't know.
got
Maybe
it,
he went to go
guys.
get